finish our first incubation period, this is going to be completely white, and that's how you're going to know that the mycelium has grown all over the surface, has woven itself into all the little substrate pieces, and it's completely binding its food source. And at that stage, it's still really fragile, so it's important to be really delicate when you're taking out your piece. You're going to take it out and make a dome around it so that you can get a second incubation period that will allow the mycelium skin, or this mycelium membrane, to grow around the parts that were pressed up against the mold. You definitely don't have to do this part. This is optional, but it will make your material stronger. As you can see here, this has been allowed to grow for a second incubation period, where the piece was already in its shape from the mold, was removed carefully from the mold, and then put into this Tupper container, which doesn't touch any of the surfaces. So it allows the membrane to grow freely without being pressed by into anything. And the reason why we put it in an enclosed space, either in like a bag or in a Tupper container, or just making kind of a dome around it with cling wrap could also work, is so that it retains its humidity and it's kind of making its own microclimate inside, so that the mycelium can continue to grow in the temperature and humidity that it thrives in. Et voila. So this piece is ready now for dehydration. It has been incubating for 2 periods now. The first period, because this was like a really healthy mycelial culture, it only took about 5 days. And then the second mycelial growth only took about 2 to 3 days. And we actually let it grow a little bit longer even. So you can see there's a fruiting of a tiny reishi mushroom that's happening here. So that could be a design choice. If you like, you can leave this in its second incubation period, lower the temperature so that you start to give signals to the mycelium to fruit. So you can actually make this happen intentionally. We're going to dehydrate this now. And this is very DIY. There's a few ways that you can dehydrate at home. Either you can use a conventional oven at a really low setting for many hours. This works well for really big pieces, but if you have something very small like a bowl like this, it's kind of energy inefficient. So because we're trying to make sustainable pieces and sustainable materials, then we want to use the more energy efficient way possible to create all these processes. And we have just at our studio this herb dehydrator, and as you'll see, this kind of DIY hack that we've done here, we have encapsulated it with a plastic film around its parameters so that we can just kind of lift it up and place our pieces in here, because the shelving is too short for anything bigger than a flat piece to be able to sit in there comfortably. And then we will put this at about 135 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 49 to 57 degrees Celsius. And in our dehydrator, this is the setting for vegetables. And we'll just turn that on and keep that on for a couple of hours. Because if you dry this at a really high temperature to get faster results, you'll actually shock the mycelium. You are extracting the humidity so quickly from the piece that it'll actually warp. So it'll contract into itself. We want to allow the humidity to leave the piece a little bit slower so that it maintains, the substrate can maintain some of its malleability, meaning it won't contract so quickly under a high temperature setting. And we'll just leave this here. Another way that you can dehydrate your pieces if you have something quite large is, for instance, this is a board that is being worked on here at the studio. It's a prototype for a surfboard. Obviously, this does not fit into our very small herb dehydrator. So to dry this, just if you live somewhere sunny, you can leave this outside to dry. Make sure that you cover it or put it in a space where it's not going to be attacked by little creatures that want to munch on your mycelium piece, or birds. Definitely has happened to some of our sculptural pieces, so it's just a word of caution. But yes, this will dry over a few days under direct sunlight and with a bit of breeze. Another way that you can dry your pieces, if you have quite a lot of pieces, they don't fit into a conventional oven, you are not in a sunny space, you're in a studio or in your home, and you don't have an herb dehydrator. How can we do that? There's a fan outside drying a bunch of pieces. Let's go! It's like not the most beautiful, but it's like, yeah. So all of these pieces don't fit into our very tiny dehydrator. We don't have a conventional oven here. In the past days, it hasn't been overly sunny. So a way to quickly get these pieces to dry is to put a fan directly onto the pieces. And once one side is fairly dry, we'll just flip them over and get the other side to dry as well. So at this stage before dehydration, the piece is still very fragile, and this is because it has such a high humidity content. Imagine just a pile of wet wood chips or wet straw. It's quite squishy. When you have that substrate dry, it retains like its more woodier and harder properties. So while you're taking this out of its mold, very carefully do that process, and same as you dehydrated, it'll also shrink about 10%. This is just, it's losing its water content. Normally this doesn't affect the shape, but it will affect the size, and also it'll be quite a lot lighter. You will notice that at this stage, it's not a heavy object at all, but it'll be about 10% of its humidity will be gone, so it'll be a bit lighter. Good things to note.